Hi, wild ones. Welcome to my channel. My name is Glow, and this is Wild Moon by Glow. All right. So if you're new here, I'm really glad you found your way in. And if you're already subscribed and returned, welcome back. Okay. I truly appreciate you being here. Okay. Okay. And heads up, I say all right and okay a lot. So, So today we're diving into a year ahead pick a pile reading, taking a look at, the energy, themes, and lessons unfolding for you as we move into 2026. And I honestly cannot freaking believe we're already here. All right. This year flew by so freaking quickly, but I'm excited to see what's coming forward for you and what wants to be highlighted as you step into the year ahead. Now, if you feel called, you can jump into the comments and share one thing you're looking forward to this year. Sometimes seeing what, others are calling in brings, inspiration or, confirmation for our own path. All right. So here's how, excuse me, this reading will flow. I'll be pulling two piles today. If you'd rather skip ahead, I'll have timestamps listed in the description. I'll also include a, still image so you can pause and sit with the imagery and choose intuitively if that feels better for you. All right. But if you'd like to stay with me, you're welcome to take a deep breath here, and bring your attention to the year ahead and allow your intuition to guide you toward the pile that, feels most aligned with you. Okay. So whenever you're ready, and I got the cards up and ready to go, choose your pile, either pile 1 or pile 2. All right. So let's go ahead and start, or not start. Let's go ahead and get those the cards for each pile. So this will be, I have 2 oracle decks right here. This will be pile number 1 and pile number 2. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and grab that card for you. All right, Spirit, what is the card for pile number 1? What is the card for pile number 1? What is the card for pile? There we go. So we have penance. Penance for pile number 1. Penance. And the number is 30 on here, okay? So number 30, penance, pile number 1. Then for pile number 2, we have pile number 2's card. Spirit, what is pile number 2's card? I feel like it's this one right here. You have autumn, release the old, and rest. Autumn, release the old, and rest here. I believe this is a crow, or possibly a raven. So autumn, release the old, and rest. Okay, so pile number 1 and pile number 2. All right, folks, I am excited to see you see what you get this year ahead, and let's go ahead and dive into it. I'll see you at your pile. Welcome, pile number 1. Now, the year theme came through as the king, okay? But not in a shiny, victorious type of way. More like, power being questioned, control being tested. There's this, image of the king riding through the crowd. Okay? Everyone's cheering, rose petals in the air, and on the surface, it looks like everything's, handled. Like things just work out like they've always have, okay? But underneath that, there's this quieter truth when things come easily for a long time. We don't always learn how to sit with like that discomfort or how to work through friction, okay? And I don't say that in a like judgmental way. It feels more like a realization, like, oh, maybe I assumed I already knew how this would go, So this year doesn't feel like it's trying to, take anything away from you. It feels more like asking you to actually stay awake while things are like happening, okay? Not to coast, not to dismiss, advice or alternative ways of doing something just because you've been fine so far. There's something about valuing the process this year, even when it's slower, even when it's annoying, and even when, you think you already know the answers. All right. Then you have the support, spirit support here. The card came through was the bottle tree. And I really love this one for this spread. It carries this old protective energy, like something quiet but intentional, watching like over you. Okay. It's not loud guidance. It's not forceful. It's more like space being held while you figure things out. Now, this card makes me think about, imagination, dreams, and like the stuff we see or feel before we know what to do with it. It also gently warns against going cynical or shutting that down just because things feel uncertain. So you might be seeing things this year, possibly ideas, inner images that feel exciting and unsettling at the same time. And, instead of rushing to make them real or dismissing them as unrealistic, the support here feels like sit with it, let it clarify, let your inner world inform you of your choices, but don't let it, spiral either, okay? And the key message here is the thing you're meant to keep in mind is Ivy. So this card says you're almost there, just a little bit further, okay? And honestly, this doesn't feel like dramatic. It feels quiet, like slow growth that doesn't look impressive day to day, but it adds up. Again, Ivy has slow growth, but it doesn't stop just because like the wall is too tall or the path is blocked. It adapts, it keeps going. And, there's something very real about that energy this year. Moments, where it might feel like nothing is happening when actually something very important is taking root here with Ivy, okay? Now we start with the story of the year. The tarot, starts off pretty heavy, I'm not gonna lie. Now with the, Seven of Swords, the Five of Pentacles, and the Ten of Swords here, it feels like, the beginning of this year is coming out of something exhausting here. So this could be a time where trust was strained with, others, with yourself, or, even with circumstances here. Now, there's a feeling of loss here, of being left out in the cold, of realizing something ended in a way you didn't fully consent to, but had to, accept anyways, okay? Then you have the King of Cups that shows up here, and that, shift the matters, okay? Because it says you're not stuck in the pain. You've learned how to sit with the emotion without letting it drown you, even if it, doesn't always feel graceful. There's emotional maturity here and, the ability to respond instead of like react, okay? So to feel deeply without unraveling. From there, you do have the Lovers and the Tower reverse showing up together. And this, feels like a crossroad type of moment here, like big choices around alignment, relationship values, commitments. And instead of like everything like blowing up, it feels like you're actively trying to, avoid repeating old chaos, choosing not to self-destruct and choosing not to, burn it all down just because, something feels uncomfortable. You're choosing that. So that's a win, right? We're going to thumbs up for that. Then you have the Wheel of Fortune, and that follows these cards, and that's where momentum starts to essentially shift. Things don't stay stuck. Life keeps moving. Timing changes, but with the Nine of Swords here, this reminds me that even when circumstances improve, the mind doesn't always like essentially like catch up right away. You have anxiety that lingers, old fears resurface. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong per se. It just means your nervous system is still, catching its breath here, trying to catch up. It's like, ooh, right? Later, you have the Two of Cups here, the High Priestess, and the Three of Cups that show, a bit of a different tone entirely. Deeper emotional connections, honest exchanges, a sense of inner knowing that feels quieter but stronger than like before. This could be, relationships deepening, or like simply, feeling more connected to yourself and your intuition, and, actually trusting it here. Then you have the Six of Swords that showed up for you, which suggests movement away from mental turbulence, not necessarily into like perfection, but into like calmer waters. And then we have the King of Pentacles and the King of Wands here. Now, confidence paired with stability here, vision paired with grounding, passion that actually goes like somewhere. This doesn't feel like a flashy type of year. It feels like, a solid one that's been earned, one that's freaking been built, okay? Now, the ending card you have for the Oracle is the Whale, where you land, the final Oracle card. And honestly, it feels like the exhale at the end of the year, like, right? Depth, emotional stability, a kind of like wisdom that only comes from having lived through things, like you lived through some things, and truly not avoiding any of it. This isn't about, being unshaken. It's about knowing you can weather the storms here because you already have, all right? There's compassion here. There's strength that doesn't need to like prove itself, all right? So really a sense that by the end of this year, you understand yourself in a way that, you didn't before, and that you understand, and that understanding brings like that peace and not so much like pressure. So if anything else, this year feels like it teaches you how to trust your depth instead of like fearing it. And maybe that's, enough here. All right, pile number one. So if this reading feels like it connected with where you are right now, you're welcome to sit with it for a bit. That was a lot that I gave you. And if at some point you want something more personal or a private reading, or, a deeper look at your own year ahead, everything I offer is linked below. You can also join my email list if you want to stay connected. I share readings, updates, and things I don't usually always post publicly. But again, I didn't say this yet, but listen, no pressure, just options if it feels right for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. But until next time, until we meet again, take care and bye. Hi, pile 2. If you chose this pile, I want to start, by saying this energy feels very like aware, not naive, not like asleep, more like someone who's been around the block enough times to, recognize the patterns, even if they're still in the middle of like, untangling everything, okay, or untangling them. Now, starting off with your Oracle cards here, the year theme for you comes in as the gambler here. And this one feels pretty like direct. This year seems to be asking you to, look honestly at where you keep placing bets, like emotionally, mentally, energetically, and really like hoping that this time things will turn out differently without, actually really changing how you're playing the game. Now, there is an image here along the lines of someone returning to the table like over and over, convinced that, that next hand will be that lucky one, even though, the pattern hasn't really changed. And this doesn't feel shamey. It feels like more observant, like noticing, oh, I keep doing this. So the energy here isn't about loss or the sake of loss. It's about, realizing that repetition alone, doesn't create progress. So this year seems to ask for, a shift in habit, not just like hope. It wants like a different approach, like a different type of like risk, if that makes sense. Now, what's guiding you though, you have the Grove here now, which feels very steady, grounding, type of support. It isn't like a loud type of guidance, right? Like in your face. It's not urgency. It's more reverence. It's a reminder that, there is something bigger than the cycle you've been stuck in, okay? So something older, something like wiser and like calmer. So this card, the Grove, is feels like reconnecting with what feels sacred to you and not what's, impressive or productive for like socially rewarded. Sorry. There's a sense of, remembering your place in something larger and letting that perspective like inform your decisions here. Okay. And then the key message for the year is the bramble. Okay. This says you can never be too prepared for the next like curveball that comes at you. Now, this doesn't feel like that anxious type of feeling. It feels more practical, like learning to essentially protect yourself without becoming like too closed off. So the bramble energy doesn't assume like disaster, but it does respect reality. Like it plans, it prepares, it, acknowledges that things can go like sideways and decides, to be ready instead. Okay. To be ready always. Now, there is something empowering about that this year, knowing you can handle fallout because you've already, thought things through here. All right. Now we're going to get into the tarot and how the year unfolds with the tarot, okay? And that opens up with the Ace of Cups here, the Page of Pentacles, and the Queen of Cups, okay? And honestly, that feels like this feels like emotional renewal paired with, grounded intention here. There's a genuine openness here, new emotional beginnings, new curiosity, a new willingness to like learn, but not recklessly, okay? So take the Queen of Cups, for instance, here. This brings emotional intelligence into the mix. You're not essentially just feeling, you're aware of like what you're feeling, okay? There's a softness here, but also like discernment, okay? Then you have the Hermit and the Temperance card showing up for you. And this tells me this year includes intentional pauses, time pulled back, space created, not isolation for the sake of like hiding per se, but reflection that leads to, the balancement. There's, recalibration happening here internally, emotionally, maybe even like spiritually with these two cards. Then you have the Lovers in reverse and Justice, and together they feel like an important, turning point here. Choices around, alignment, truth-telling, accountability. This could be about relationships, but it also feels, border, like values, agreements, and things you once said yes to that really don't no longer fit here, okay? And the reversal for the Lovers card suggests that something is not lining up anymore, and Justice asks you to, look at that honestly without like betraying yourself here, or self-betrayal. Then you have the Five of Swords here, and this card always makes me like pause. It brings up like conflict, power struggles, and situations where winning doesn't actually feel really good. This might be a moment where you realize some battles aren't worth the cost, or that, proving a point isn't the same as like protecting your own peace here. Then comes the Two of Wands, and this feels like you're standing at the edge of something new, but with more clarity than like before. So you're not essentially like blindly choosing anymore. You're considering consequences, options, direction here. Okay. Now, what I do find interesting though, you do have the King of Cups, the Queen of Wands, and the King of Wands here, and all appear together in the spread, right? So that's a lot of like embodied energy, emotional mastery paired with like, confidence and leadership. Okay. So you got the kings and queens here. So it feels like stepping into visibility in a way that's actually aligned, not, and not performative. Okay. But then the Seven of Swords and the Queen of Pentacles pop up here and they remind that trust with yourself especially is, part of the work here. So being honest about like your motives, about where you might still be avoiding something, and, grounding all of this growth into real life. So stabilities, boundaries, self-respect. So this year doesn't feel, chaotic. It feels more corrective, okay? Now for your closing oracle card, where things land here, the closing card is the raccoon. And I love this as an ending for you, okay? We like it as an ending card, okay? This card talks about, talent, creativity, but also like about hiding like behind this like little cute mask here, about wondering, whether you're, showing the world who you really are or who, you think you're supposed to be. Now, by the end of this year, it feels like that question can't be avoided anymore. Yeah. So not in listen, not in a scary way, but in more of like a clarifying type of way, okay? So there's really this like readiness here to step into something more honest, more integrated, more like you, not just what works, not just like what's like safe, but what actually feels like true to you. And that feels like a, kind of courage, more like a quieter courage, okay? Now, pile 2, if this reading touched on patterns you've been noticing or ones you're starting to see more clearly, you don't have to sort through that alone. If you want more of a personal look at your year, your choices, or, where your energy wants to shift, you can book a private reading with me. A private with me. Sorry, I just like literally lost my train of thought. But all the links are below. You can also join my email list if you want to stay connected in a way where I, don't share as much online. I share readings and reflections and offerings there when they feel like relevant, okay? Now, thank you for spending this time with me. I do appreciate it. Until we meet again, take care and bye.